Honourable colleagues, I quote, "There's much more to the story that needs to be told. We owe it to Canadians to ensure they know the truth."
Hear, hear.
Honourable colleagues, those are the words of a senior former cabinet minister in the Trudeau government, Dr. Jane Philpott. She's clearly calling for transparency and accountability. She's clearly asking Parliament of Canada to have the truth rain down on this place. And instead of the Prime Minister allowing the other place and this place to do its job, he chooses to hire a former Deputy Prime Minister to come into his office and to educate him on the important principle on the separation of power between the executive, the legislature and the judiciary, and also to explain to him the role of the Attorney General and the Justice Minister of Canada. At least there are two former cabinet ministers in his government that understood this important principle. There has been 23 prime ministers in this country over 150 years, and not a single one has attempted to transgress that important principle. Why does this prime minister have such difficulty understanding the importance of separation between the executive and the judiciary and respect that?
Hear, hear.
Harder.
If the question is the question as posed, Prime Minister, of course, understands deeply the important relationship that is involved in the exercising of responsibilities by the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General. He has respected that with respect to the work of the former and present Minister of Justice and Attorney General. He has respected that in terms of how his government, in proceeding with the newly created deferred prosecution agreement provisions, did so with caution and in an informed fashion, and that is the issue that he is seeking additional advice from the former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice and Attorney General, because that is a unique and newly informed provision in the Canadian practice, and one that this government wants to ensure is proceeded with cautiously and appropriately.
Sakis.
Government leader, clearly this Prime Minister doesn't understand the principle, because he has lost two senior former cabinet ministers who are both saying, as of today, there's a lot more to the story than we have already heard. And as a Parliament, we owe it to Canadians to find out exactly what that story is and allow for Canadians to come to a determination if laws have been broken or not, and the police authorities will come to that determination. Clearly, the Prime Minister is struggling with this important principle, because if he hadn't been struggling with it, he wouldn't need to hire an outside advisor like Anne McClellan to come in and explain it for him. Now, my question, Government Leader, wouldn't it have been a lot easier for this Prime Minister to just simply count upon the advice, the sage advice by experienced Liberals who have experience in government and in Parliament, some of those non-merit appointed Liberals that are sitting in the Senate that he threw out of his National Governing Caucus 3 years ago, people with experience, like Senator Mercer, like Senator Down, like Senator Joyal, like Senator Dawson. Couldn't this Prime Minister have benefited from some of their experience and not put the country in the political crisis and judicial crisis we're in today? It is no laughing matter. Trudeau-appointed senators might be laughing, but it's no laughing matter.
Senator Harder.
I'm trying to figure out what the question is, but let me simply say, let me say that the Prime Minister has, as I've said several times now, sought the advice of the former Deputy Prime Minister and Attorney General on a very specific set of questions. With regard to, in the preamble of the question, there was reference to laws having been broken. The former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, in her 4.5 hours of testimony, made clear that in her view, and she is the Minister of Justice and the person most affected in this, there were no laws broken. To suggest that there are, or to suggest that the police are investigating, is to try to invent and stoke a fire.